Yeah, it's green light anywho. All right, are we ready to begin? It doesn't look like it. Good morning. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Anybody have anything you want to tell us? Did you hear what Rick really emphasized at the end? I found it most interesting. He said, does Jesus fill the screen? Right? You remember that? Yeah. And then suddenly I started to whistle, Be Thou My Vision. We played that this morning? Is that right? Yeah. Doesn't that say the same thing? Be Thou My Vision. What are you looking at? Does Jesus fill the screen? Isn't that saying the same thing? It's a nice connection. I liked it. So here's the question. Does anything Bruce, I have bordered on calling him Bruce in my mind 4 or 5 times. Don't tell him. Okay. And I don't know why. He doesn't? No, I think he does. He does look like... Now, I don't know if you're allowed to tell him that she said that. I don't know why. But in my mind, there have been 3 or 4 times I've bordered on calling him Bruce. And so I just did aloud. Rick, does anything Rick, is there any connection between what Rick was teaching us this last hour and what I'm about to teach you? It's all about Jesus. And we're actually going to be in Genesis chapter 12, and Rick had us in Revelation. Do you see how it's connected? You see how it's one Bible? Rick has said that as well. It's one Bible. It's one story. Rick has said that. And I have said that also. I think it's fantastic. It's so encouraging. And I want you to turn to Exodus chapter 1. We're going to pick up where we left off. And I want to read the same verse we read yesterday in Exodus chapter 1. And it prompted me, and I told my wife and my son last night, that I couldn't help myself. We had to go back to Genesis. We just had to. Let's just read this. Verse 7 of chapter 1 of Exodus. But the sons of Israel 5 times were fruitful, increased greatly, multiplied, became exceedingly mighty, and that the land was filled with them. 5 different ways. In one verse, it says Israel was big, a lot of Jews. 5 different ways in one verse. And from there, I couldn't help myself. If I want you to understand that verse and the rest of Exodus, we needed to go back to Genesis. I told my wife and my son that last night. And the truth is, neither one of them were surprised. Because I can hardly teach anything in the Bible without going back to Genesis. So I walked us through Genesis a little bit yesterday. Do you recall? We looked at Genesis chapter 3. We looked at what we call the fall, which is not a biblical term, but it's okay to use. We looked at the fall. And then we talked about the flood. And why did we talk about the flood? Why did I bring the flood up?
Talking about how there's the promised Messiah and looking at the men who were still alive. It said through his, so they were looking at all the males still. Is that
right. The Messiah had not come yet, and everybody's wiped out except for these 4 guys. Doesn't that make it easy? So easy to follow the line. So easy to find the Messiah. And then I took us to chapter 10, I mentioned chapter 10 and then chapter 11 of Genesis after the flood. And why did we go there? Chapter 11, after the flood.
Keep on looking.
Pardon?
Keep on looking. Looking through genealogies to follow the line.
Follow the line. Like a laser beam from Shem to Terah. Like a laser beam. Unmissable. Unless you don't look. And how many people say, oh, another genealogy? You cannot miss the laser beam line from Shem to Terah unless you're not looking. Then you can miss it. So I didn't want us to not look, so we looked at it. And it brought us to Terah. And then with Terah, we saw 3 guys. And who are the 3 guys? The difference was, with all the other guys, Arpachshad, Shelah, Eber, Reu, Peleg, all the other guys, they had other sons and daughters, right? But we get to Terah, and we're told of 3 sons. That's different. When you see a change like that, pay attention. What's going on here? Why is this different? And then we went to the next verse, and we saw the same exact words for Terah that we saw for Shem. And this is the genealogy of Shem, and this is the genealogy of Terah. In other words, the genealogy of Shem, one of the guys to be following, was solely designed to bring us to the genealogy of Terah. The whole point of Shem's genealogy was to bring us to the genealogy of Terah. And when we get to Terah, we're told about 3 guys. And who are they? Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And who's the star of the show? Abram. And we all know that, yes.
So if it's a laser beam line straight to Jesus, and Jesus comes from the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then what's the point of Nahor and Haran? Where do they?
Or any of the other genealogies that are in the Bible.
Right.
Same question? Yeah. What's the point? All I can do is think about what the point is. It's God's way of showing us how the world was populated. It's God's way of showing us of his plan for all of the world. It's God's way of establishing the difference between the Jews and the Gentiles, because he establishes that and he keeps it that way. He keeps Israel very distinct from all the other nations. In fact, in Genesis chapter 5, we have 70 nations mentioned, and they are the 70 who are specifically different, designated to be different than the nation of Israel. So but those are my thoughts. That's not declared. But in the Bible, it's very clear that we're supposed to get to Terah, because that's exactly what we do. And then from Terah we get to Abraham, and then the story just carries on with Abraham for the rest of the Bible, basically.
Does it ever continue from Haran?
Yeah, Lot. Did somebody say Lot? Right, Lot is being Haran's son, or Nahor's son? Haran's son. And then even Haran has some land as well in an area. So yes, we learn more about them, but Nahor just kind of comes out of the story. Yeah. But we do, and we don't see so much the genealogy of Haran. So I'm sure I haven't given you a concrete answer to your question, Blake. But it's how we see the world fill with people. Yeah. But the other genealogies, when we get to 1 Chronicles, the first 9 chapters of 1 Chronicles are all genealogies, but it's all genealogies within the nation of Israel. Then with Jesus, we get 2 genealogies. One in Matthew chapter 1 and one in Luke chapter 3, and they're both designed to show us coming from, in Luke it's coming from God, and in Matthew it's coming from Abraham to Jesus. That's the purpose of those genealogies. So a lot of the genealogies later on are all within the nation of Israel. I don't know if I can say all of them, and there aren't that many more. Quite a few in 1 Chronicles, though. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Okay, then let's go to Genesis chapter 12. This is the Abrahamic covenant, brethren. And we're going to take a few minutes on this. And I don't know how much farther we'll get past the Abrahamic covenant this morning, but then once we get past the Abrahamic covenant, we're going to dive into Exodus. Because once we get past the Abrahamic covenant, and if you understand it, then you're prepared to understand Exodus. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. I'm going to read 3 verses, then we're going to go back in and visit that. Genesis 12:1. Now the Lord said to Abram, who's Abram? He's Abraham. He's not called Abraham yet. What does Abram mean? Exalted father. What does Abraham mean? Father of? Not faith. Nation, no. Pardon? Many. Hamim is many in Hebrew. Abba. You heard of Abba? Abba means father, right? So Abraham, father of many. Hamim, father of many. Okay. Abram, exalted father. The Lord said to Abram, so it's not Terah, it's not Nahor, it's not Haran, it's not Lot. The Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Let's stop there. And we're going to look at it. Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house. What is Abram's country? Is a region. Of the, anybody know? Chaldees? Somebody said that? Of the Chaldees? What's Chaldees? What's another name for Chaldees? Chaldea. Chaldeans, Chaldea. What's another term? It's got 2 terms. Starts with a B. Babylon. Abram was Babylonian. And in Joshua, it tells us he was an idolatrous Babylonian. Just by the way. He was an idolatrous Babylonian. He worshipped things like, this stand. Bow down to this stand. That's what an idolatrous person does. And you know that there's still people on earth who do that today? In fact, billions worship things like this. Chunks of metal, chunks of wood, chunks of stone. Today, I've watched it. I've seen them sold. I've seen these idols sold in stores in India. Billions of people worship things like this today. What can this do for you? Nothing. But people worship it. Abram was one of those. And God said, come here. Come out of Chaldea. Come out of Babylon. And leave your father's house. And go to, what does it say? The land. So the first part, we're going to look at 4 parts of this covenant. Go to the land. Go to the land which I will show you. Okay? That's the first part. Second part. And there are a few other parts, but we're just going to look at the 4 main ones. Verse 2, I will make you a great nation. Okay? I will make you a great nation. This is what God says to Abram. Make you a great nation. What does that mean? Many people, yes. Powerful country, yes. That becomes true. What else? Focus on, instead of the word great. Instead of the word nation, focus on the word make.
It will be provided by God. God will do it.
It will be provided by God. God will do it. Let's take it a little farther. Correct. It will be provided by God. God will do it. Let's expound on that idea that God will do it. God will do what? Provide. Okay, we're still on the word make. I will make you a great nation. You're on track.
Creation, like creating things?
Create. In other words, did the nation exist? Brethren, did the nation exist? Not yet. So God takes this man, Abram, and he says, leave Babylon and go to the land I'm going to give to you, and of you I'm going to start something new. Understand? Didn't exist before. Okay, let's keep reading. Verse 2, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. Now go to verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. What does that mean? With Abraham for sure. Mm-hmm. What else? What does that mean?
Maybe God is like trying to be a friend or trying to take care of Abraham.
God will be a friend and God will take care of Abraham. Absolutely. Let me read it again. I will bless those who bless you, and the one, and I'm emphasizing words, I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. Was your hand up? Okay, it's always good. Always a good thing to do. Think more. Sorry? No, that's a very good good response to the way it reads, but it's not saying there's a whole group and then one. It's those and those. Say that again. The cursed one is Satan, yes, but it's not just saying one. It's saying if one, any one who curses you will be cursed. Any one. So it could be you're all any ones. A group of any ones. Yeah?
I feel like it shows that God's covenant with Abraham affects not only Abraham but everybody, because it depends on how people interact with Abraham from that point on.
God's covenant with Abraham affects not only Abraham but everyone. And how people treat Abraham will affect people from now on. So, yes? I'm sorry. It's my fault. These are not what they used to be.
Because God is with his people, if you curse his people, you curse God.
Because God is with his people. I was told by Rick, different Rick, yesterday, to repeat answers. Since God is with his people, if you curse his people, you're cursing God. That's a very insightful statement. Let me rephrase this. I agree with everything you've said. It's all wonderful. Let me take it one more level. Let me just put it in these words and tell me if it's correct, because this is just me, so tell me if it's correct. I will bless those who bless you. The one who curses you, I will curse. How people treat you is how I'm going to treat them. What do you think? How people treat you, Abram, is how I'm going to treat them. What do you think? Is that all right? Okay. What's that going to do with Abram?
It'll depend on
And how Abram treats other people? Well, it doesn't say that. It just says how other people treat Abram is how God's going to treat the other people.
Well, I think what she said, it sounds, I mean, what it would ask me what it did to Abram, like, Abram's, I guess, actions still have play a role in that, because he's not just blessed regardless, like, he can't just go around doing whatever he wants, because, you know, if you offend somebody, then maybe they treat him some way.
It doesn't give Abram a carte blanche to behave poorly. No, of course not. Yes?
It's going to help like make the previous statement true of making him a great nation, because that's how he's going to become a great nation, because he'll be blessed. And then people who will try to stop him from becoming a great nation will be cursed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
it's going to aid in helping him succeed.
Right, and we'll see that when we get back to Exodus chapter 1. That it will aid in helping make Israel a great nation. We'll see that played out in chapter 1 of Exodus. Let me run this past you, okay? If Rick Bunshu came and said, Brad is kind of, I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to watch all of you. And how you treat Brad is how I'm going to treat you. If you want to do well here, you better treat Brad well. But if you don't treat Brad well, it might not go well for you here at Anchor House. Now, what's that going to do with Brad? Is that going to make it easy for Brad to just kind of fit in? Or is everybody going to, every time they come around Brad, they're going to pay attention? Is Rick watching? Is Brad just going to be part of the crowd, or is Brad going to be kind of separated out?
Brad's going to be special, and we're going to see him, and we're going to go, I want to make sure he's treated good, and I'm going to give him my extra candy, and I'm going to make sure he's doing okay all the time, and he's going to get special treatment.
He's going to be separated out. Special treatment, right? In other words, Brad's going to be different than the rest of the student body. God says to Abram, how everyone on earth treats you is how I'm going to treat everyone on earth. How everyone on earth treats your nation is how I'm going to treat everyone on earth. And what that's going to do for this nation that he is making, what that's going to do is keep this nation separate from everyone else. The word is distinct. It's going to keep this nation distinct.
Doesn't also the word holy mean set apart?
In essence, yes. Come here. I'm going to give you some land. I'm going to make you a great nation. Come over here. Abram, come here. Here's your land. I'm going to put you in this land. I'm going to make a nation out of you, Abram. And I'm going to watch how everyone treats you. I'm going to keep you distinct from everybody else. This is what God has just said to Abram. That's only 3 of the 4 that we're going to look at, parts of this covenant. This is what God has said to Abram. The question is why? Why, Abram? Abram, come here. Why? Why? Abram, go to this land that I'm going to give you. I'm going to make a nation out of you. Well, why? And not only am I going to make a nation, I'm going to put you in this land as a nation, and I'm going to keep you distinct and different from everyone else on earth. Why? I'm going to take your hand in a moment. I think you all know the answer. Yes.
Does it go back a little bit to the genealogies and how there's only 4 people, and we know that Christ is going to come from one of these 4 people, and so God is kind of taking his pick, like, hey, I'm going to use this guy, and I'm going to use this guy, and take his descendants and create another laser and have Jesus come out of him and his descendants.
Okay, so summarize that. Final conclusion to what you just said. You just said it right at the end in particular.
He's setting apart someone that the Messiah is going to come through.
He's setting apart somebody through whom the Messiah is going to come. That's it. Let's read the last part of this covenant. Verse 3, I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. In you, Abram, I'm going to bless everyone. Now, Patty and I learned just the other day that we have a 13th grandchild. This baby is still in the womb of our Rachel, who is our son Joseph's wife. Or I saw, what's the name? What's Zion's brother's name? Ezekiel? Yeah. I saw Ezekiel today, and Ezekiel's, he's just 3 months old, isn't he? As precious as can be. Because of what happened in Genesis chapter 3, everybody who's been born after that, and at that point nobody had been born, right? In Genesis 3, no one had been born. Correct? Who was on earth? Adam and who were their parents? They weren't born, were they? So did they have belly buttons? We won't get into that discussion. But they weren't born. So nobody had been born yet. And then the first person who was born was Cain. And when Cain was born, Adam and Eve were now spiritually dead. Adam and Eve were separate from God. And every person ever born, as a result, the separation was passed down to every person ever born. Except for one. Every person ever born was born spiritually dead. Ezekiel was born spiritually dead, and so will that little baby in my Rachel. That baby will come out spiritually dead. Through you, Abram, I'm going to bless everyone. What is the blessing everyone needs? What does every dead person need? Life. So, Abram, come here. Come here. Come here. Come to this land, and I'm going to make a nation out of you, and I'm going to keep you separate from everyone else, because through you, Abram, I'm going to bring the Messiah. That's the Abrahamic covenant. And brethren, once we get on this track, we're not getting off. We're not getting off the track of this nation. If you look through your Bible, we go from Genesis to Exodus. Exodus is about the nation of Israel. To Leviticus, it's about the nation of Israel. To Numbers, it's the numbers of the nation of Israel. To Deuteronomy, it's a preparation of the nation of Israel to go into the land. Joshua leads what nation? Israel. Judges, leading what nation? Israel. Then we come to 1st and 2nd Samuel, and we get a king like Saul. King's the Saul of what nation? And then David, king of what nation? And then we go to 1st and 2nd Kings, and there are kings of. And then we go to 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and there are kings of. And then we get Psalms, and we get the guy David who wrote, and David is the king of, and Solomon is the king of. And then we get these prophets, and the prophets are all from what nation? Nation of Israel, and prophesying to Israel and in relation to Israel. They prophesy to other nations as well, but almost always it's in relation to how the nation treats Israel. And then when we go to the New Testament, we go to Matthew chapter 1. Go there. Go to Matthew chapter 1, please. New Testament, first verse. First verse. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of... who's David? Well, yes, a few generations later, but who's David? King of The son of Abraham. This guy. Because it's through this guy that genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah. This is your covenant that guarantees God fulfilling his promise in Genesis chapter 3. Your faith rests in this covenant. Your faith rests that God is good to his word and he brought the Messiah through Abram. Now, did Israel ever try to blend in? They did. A number of times. What's that? Give us a king like the other nations. We want to blend in. Don't keep us different. We don't want to be different. Now, in more modern times, one of the reasons Israel doesn't want to be different is because people try to kill them. I don't know if you've noticed that or been aware of that. I have plenty of friends who are Jewish who changed their names when their families came from Europe to the States or to Canada. They changed their last names so you wouldn't know that they were Jewish. They changed their last names from Jewish last names to Gentile last names. Because if people know I'm Jewish, they might try to kill me. But just so you know, it doesn't work. Jews can never hide, and Jews will never disappear. Israel will not disappear. God made Israel distinct. People look at the Jews and they say, why do these Jews have to be so different? You have to take that up with God, because he's the one who decided it. But people don't think that way, so they just attack. Once we get on this train, we're not getting off. So you could look at Israel like this. I have zero artistic ability. That's a train track. That I can do. Probably most people can do that. This is going to be a train car. And since I don't want to draw Jesus, I'm going to just write, since we called him that today. And the car goes on the track. And as a train car comes on the track of Israel, Jesus comes. And we're never getting off that track, even into the eternity. I believe the presence of the nation of Israel exists even into eternity. Not that they are bringing the Messiah anymore, but the identity, I believe, will continue. But that's God's business. Don't blame the Jews. This is what God did. And so why is your Bible, I appreciated Rick doing this yesterday, go to the end of, go to Genesis 1 and 2, start in Genesis 3, and then go to Revelation 21, and then look in between, and it's all about recovering, if I can paraphrase. Recovering from what happened in chapter 3. This is all about recovering, getting from perfection. We're in trouble, getting back to perfection. Well, all of this is what's called the Old Testament. All of this is designed to bring us to this. Wouldn't it be so much easier and so much lighter in my backpack if all I had was this? I've been carrying this thing around. It's so big. And what do I even need this stuff for, this portion of it? Old Testament. It's old. When you get a new pair of shoes, new pair of sandals, since we're in Hawaii, when you get a new pair of flip-flops, what do you do with the old ones? Give them to your younger brother? And you wear your new ones, right? Because that's what old and new communicates. New, old. New, old. Those are not inspired terms, Old Testament, New Testament. Just so you know, those are not inspired terms. So don't let them fool you. The new makes no sense without the old. And beginning with Moses and the law, and you've heard this, beginning with Moses and the law and also the prophets, Old Testament, he explained everything to them concerning himself found there. And what did Paul do in Thessalonica? For 3 Sundays, he expounded to them from the Scriptures that the Old Testament, that this Jesus in Jerusalem is the Messiah from the Old Testament. And he didn't teach from Galatians because he didn't have it. He hadn't written it yet. Don't get distracted by the terms old and new. Besides, how new is the new? Do you have anything in your closet that's 1950 years old? So it's not so new anyway, is it? And our brother said this yesterday, it's one story, it's one Bible. Remember that. If you leave Anchor House thinking that this is a bunch of divided sections and a bunch of unrelated parts and stories, when you stand up, if this is your little pedestal at your college, I'm not going to stand on it because I don't know about it. If you stand on this is your pedestal at your college, and you're the believer at your school, and you think that this is a bunch of divided little stories that don't relate to each other, then somebody's going to come over and just poof. Somebody who speaks better than you do and can debate better than you can just poof, push you right over off your little pedestal, Christian. But when you understand the inspiration and the unity and how beautifully interwoven it all is and how it tells the same story all throughout. You guys you surf, right? Okay, is this the way you surf? Or you play basketball? Is this the way you set up for a rebound? No, you need a solid stance, don't you? This is the stance you get when you understand what your scriptures are. They're all about Christ. This is the stance you get. Oh, no, I thought they were about me. Sorry. They're all about Christ. Abrahamic covenant. You can't understand Exodus without understanding the Abrahamic covenant. Now, a couple of more questions. How many children did Abraham have? He actually had quite a few after his wife Sarah died. Pardon? Many sons. Yeah. Father Abraham had many sons. Man. All right, who was the first one? Who was the first one born? Ishmael. Who was Ishmael's mother? Hagar. She was an Egyptian handmaid. Okay, who's Abram's second son? Isaac. Okay, turn to Genesis chapter 22.
I have a question about Genesis 12.
Yeah.
On verse 4 says Lot went with them. Why did Lot go with Abram?
Well, if we read the end of chapter 11, we do see that Lot's father dies, and Terah dies, and eventually Abram, Sarai, and Lot just go. But I don't know why Lot went with him. It's a good observation. Okay, so who is Abram's second son? Isaac. And Isaac's mother was Sarah. So what happens in Genesis chapter 22? Pardon? Right, God tells Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. And what does God call Isaac? In what verse? verse 2. All right, start in verse 1. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abram and said, Abraham. And he said, here I am. He said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love. Well, was Isaac his only son? No. Who else did he have? He had Ishmael at the time. If you go to verse... hang on. Verse 16. By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. But Isaac wasn't his only son. But Isaac was the son of the promise. Isaac was the one through whom the Messiah was going to come. Isaac had how many sons? Oh, before we carry on, go to chapter 26. Isaac. Genesis 26, verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land besides the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land. Now he's speaking to Isaac. God is. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and to your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham, and I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven, and I will give your descendants all these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. God spoke to Isaac, and he passed down the Abrahamic covenant to Isaac. Did Abraham pass it down to Isaac? God did. Why did God do it? Because God was going to make sure it happened. Because God promised the Messiah. How many sons did Isaac have? 2. What are their names? Jacob and Esau. Which son was the son of the promise? How do you know? How do you know?
Because the blessing was passed down from Abraham to Isaac and from Isaac to Jacob.
Yes, it was. How do you know Jacob's the one? Yeah. Jesus came through his line? That's correct. But let's say before all of that happened. Yes?
Is it because of Isaac giving him the blessing? Would he take the blessing from him?
Well, yes. I mean, he was supposed to do that, and he did. Gave him the blessing. But how do we know that Jacob is the son of the promise? Who's Jacob's mother? Rebekah. Rebekah was barren. Isaac prayed for her. She became pregnant. And how many people were in her womb? 2. And her womb was going wild. Let's read it. Go to back up to chapter 25, verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. And the Lord answered him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is so, why am I this way? So she went to inquire of the Lord. I'll stop there just a moment. Her womb is going wild. And she says, what's going on in here? That's what she says. For some reason, she did not get an ultrasound. Did you know that the ability to have an ultrasound and the ability to know the gender, the sex of the baby in the womb, how long has it been around? 50 years? We didn't even do that with my children. So now we have gender reveal parties, right? Oh, pink balloons or blue balloons or pink shirts or blue shirts. For almost all of human history, the only being who knew who was in the womb was who? God. For almost all of human history, it's such a small part of human history that we can know who's in the womb. So Rebekah had no option. She couldn't go and get an ultrasound. So she goes to the only one who can tell her. So verse 23. Verse 22, she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. You have twins, Rebekah. And 2 people shall be separated from your body, and one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Who's the older? He came out first. How much after Esau did Jacob come out? He was holding on to him. Right? Now, so who's the older? Esau. And who's the younger? And what does God say? The older, the younger, will supplant the older. Supplant means switch positions with. One who supplants. That's what Jacob means. One who supplants. Jacob, the older, will serve the younger. Jacob was the son of the promise, and who decided that? God did. In the womb. Okay, good. Now go to chapter 28. Chapter 28, verse 10. Jacob departed from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and spent the night there because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of the place and put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he had a dream. And behold, a ladder was set on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your descendants. How many descendants did he have at this time? 0. He was on his way to go get his wife Rachel according to his parents' instructions. The land on which you lie, I will give it to you and to your descendants. Verse 14. Your descendants shall also be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? What do you call that? Pardon? Yes? What do you call what God just said? Which covenant? The Abrahamic covenant. He even mentions Abraham and Isaac when he passes it down. God speaks it to Abraham, God speaks it to Isaac, God speaks it to Jacob, because God's going to make it happen. He promised a Savior, and he's going to bring a Savior. Okay, now, yesterday we talked about, did we talk about Egypt? Did we talk about the children of Israel going into Egypt? We did, didn't we? I can't recall. About why they went into Egypt? We talked about that. Why did they go into Egypt? Because of the famine. And why was there a famine? Pharaoh's dream. Why was there a famine? God created a famine to bring the children of Israel into Egypt. God created a famine to bring the children of Israel into Egypt. Now, why did God want the children of Israel in Egypt? To grow, and that's what you said. So now turn to Genesis and go to chapter 46. We're skipping through the story. Joseph has revealed himself to his brothers. His father Jacob is on his way to Egypt with all that he has. Verse 1 of chapter 46. Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. You see how both names are used, Israel and Jacob? And God said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. He said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. Stop there. Why did the children of Israel go into Egypt? To become a great nation. And now that they're a great nation in Exodus chapter 1, it's time to get them out and to get them to the land. See how the story is progressing? Now they're a great nation. Back to Exodus chapter 1. Turn there, please. Let us read verses 1 through 7 again. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. They came to Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number, but Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation, but the sons of Israel were fruitful, increased greatly, multiplied, became exceedingly mighty, so that the land was filled with them. Stop there. 5 times, 1 verse, as we've discussed. So how many went into Egypt?
12 or 11.
What does it say? All those who came from the loins of Jacob who went into Egypt were 70. 70 went in. How long were they in there? 400 years. 400 years. How many came out 400 years later? How many came out? In Numbers chapter 1, we're told how many of you guys are there. Young men, warring age, Numbers chapter 1. We're given an approximate in Exodus chapter 12. So somebody go to the end of chapter 1. Not the last verse in Numbers chapter 1, but near the end. And tell me how many it says. Go ahead. 603,550. That's how many of you guys came out. Just you guys. I'm not counted. Since Rick referred to me as being older, I can refer back to Rick as being older as well. We're not in the count. You guys are in the count. But just men. So by the time you're your age, guess what? Back then, you're married. So I'm going to give you all a wife. This is not a promise. So now, young men and women is 1.2 million. Now, guess what else by the time you're your age? Because you start getting pregnant like 13 and 14. That's the way it works. So, I'm going to give you all 2 children, which is probably conservative. I'm going to give you all 2 children by this warring age. So you just double the number. $2.5 million. 2.5 million came out. 70 went in. 400 years. 2.5 million come out. Brethren, do we have our great nation? Yes. We do. And now we come to Exodus. Because it's time to get this nation to the land. That's part of the Abrahamic covenant and part of God's promise for salvation. You guys understand? Okay. When we come back this afternoon, we will dive in to Exodus. Okay. See you later.